walking the direct Bodhi path. The initial verse. So we are supposed to walk the Bodhi path. To walk the Bodhi path, we need to have an upright mind. Why do we need an upright mind? Because the upright mind is the one that can generate right thinking. So the right thinking, we can practice the right livelihood. Especially for us, we are householders, right? So we need to undertake the right livelihood in our practice. And to engage in the flawless study, right, is to make sure we have the right precepts, and we undertake to uphold the right precepts, and this one requires the right diligence. And also in all this practice, we need to grow in wisdom. That wisdom can only be grown by having a resolve in our practice, and that can only come about we have the right views and right action, so that we have to live the wisdom life, which is the right concentration on this resolve to practice. So now, if everything is so right, isn't it simple in the world that we have all the right things? So why only a small minority of the people take this right path? So if huge majority doesn't take right path, what is it wrong that other people or the minds of all these people see in the path? And I think we in this context, then today's teaching is about the Noble Eightfold Path. And all this the Noble Eightfold Path consists of all the 8 rights that we walk. And we say that all these are all right. So, but minority only people only see it as right. A huge majority do not see that. So my question is, what is it wrong in this? And the Buddha knew about this. That's why before the Noble Eightfold Path was given, the Buddha taught about the Four Noble Truths. Unless one understands the Four Noble Truths, it's very difficult for someone to actually understand and accept the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, why is that so? Because the Noble Eightfold Path talks about suffering, talks about causation, which means a cause and effect. So unless one understands that, Master explained about extremism, and eternalism, that people think that they will take next rebirth, take back as a human life, as we have in this life, or they think there's only a one life theory, and therefore the karma, a law of cause and effect, does not happen. So that's the reason why, whilst it is right to us who understand the Noble Eightfold Path, it's hard for many, a big majority of them to understand what is right. So with an upright mind and right actions, we will be able to enter the Bodhi path. And this right upright mind is one that is able to discern the Four Noble Truths and have the respect for the universal law of cause and effect. So unless that's happened, one will start off with the wrong view, and it's hard to be in practice. So in our daily living, before we take any action, we must cultivate the right thinking. And right thinking can only come about from the right understanding. So it means to cultivate a meditative state, which Master often refers as samadhi. Every thought that arises and every action we can take, or be a practice of meditation and proper contemplation, and as a way of cultivating right thinking. Although Master didn't quite explain this practice of meditation, but she has explained about the state of samadhi. And this is important to have that state, because That's where the realization and contemplation comes about. And you can understand and realize beyond the words expressed. And that's where the realization of the truth can come about. So with this right thinking, and for us as a householder, then we can practice right livelihood. And right livelihood means our behavior must be proper. And the vocation that we undertake does not go against what understand of the Dharma is. So, for example, no killing, right? And no stealing, and so on and so forth. And undertake the wholesome deeds. So in this human life, our conduct and deeds are intimately related to the physical body. And that's why, because it's a cause and effect. And the effect can also impact our own body. And whether, and the bounce back or the effect of our karmic causes can happen in this life or into a future life. So if a future life will be a future physical body. So everything we do is related to this life of ours. If we did not have this life, we would not be able to create negative karma. So that's one way to look at it. It's also because we have this life that we have the opportunity to cultivate ourselves. So therefore, we need to understand the purpose of this life that we have. So unless you understand the purpose, then this life will be totally wasted. So the actions taken by this body depend on what we contemplate, how we think in our daily living. So contemplate the daily living, that goes back to the point that now earlier, say one teacher, a couple of days ago or 3 days ago, I spoke about cleverness, right? And I explained that that's knowing and understand the Dharma. But today is about to contemplate this realization, which is a third stage of progress in discerning the Dharma. So realization, and with how we do that in our daily living, and that's practice. So realization is still not good enough. So we need to apply that realization in our daily living so that we walk the path. And that's what it means by taking the Dharma to heart. So we must make use of our pure mind and body to have the upright mind and proper conduct. And this is how we practice this right livelihood for us. That means we live in accord with the Dharma. And then with the right diligence, and this is necessary even to uphold the precepts that we have undertaken, right? So, and earlier Master explained already, spoke about the 5 precepts and obviously the 10 wholesome deeds. So this requires the right diligence, and this right diligence is applying the right effort in our practice. So what are the right efforts? And you relate back to much earlier teaching. They got 4 right efforts, right? And so we do so by making sure we do not deviate. These precepts are our safeguards from deviation. And the right concentration on the result of the practice. And that is what we need to do to have this spiritual aspiration so that it is firm in the result. And also transformation. So Master mentioned to say that without a small vehicle, it would be difficult to give great teaching and therefore impossible to transform them. And that was what the Buddha understood. Even before the Noble Eightfold Path, one have to understand the Four Noble Truths, because that's the core understanding for one to then know what has to be done. So it's the same way as ourselves in this life. If we do not understand our own self, how do we know what to correct? And so in the same way, after understanding the Four Noble Truths, then we then understand how we need to correct ourselves by undertaking the path, the practice of the Four Noble Truths. So this, the Four Noble Truths and Noble Eightfold Path, these are provisional teachings, and this is necessary because the skillful means because the people need to understand this provisional teaching first before we can graduate towards the great vehicles Dharma. So This was the skillful means that the Buddha applied, and applied suitable for our capabilities to transform us, and even for ourselves even today. In these modern times, we need to understand the Four Noble Truths. We need to understand the Noble Eightfold Path before we can understand the Lotus Sutra. So this the progress that one needs to grow in our understanding. So if we do not transform ourselves in this life, in which lifetime will we transform ourselves? So that's the part that I mentioned earlier. Then this life will be wasted. So when we learn the Dharma, we need to change our life. And so that's why when we take on this life, that when before we understand the Dharma, we have been brought up to understand the life based on worldly convention. So when we take on the Dharma, we need to unlearn what we have been taught. Then we learn the Buddha's way, we learn the Dharma, and then we relearn how to live again in accord with the Dharma. So we may be waiting for the future lifetime to cultivate. We do not know where our circumstantial and direct attribution will take us in our next life. So we cannot wait to say that this life let me enjoy, and next life, if this life you enjoy all your merits, there got no more merits. You never know what's the next rebirth going to be. It could be a lower evil realm. We never know. So we cannot wait till we lose our life and thus lose our wisdom life, that we are capable of living in this life. So the lessons learned is that we must be mindful in cultivating an upright mind and proper conduct. Now, this proper conduct, so therefore, this conduct is about our character. So all these things evolve around in all the Dharma that we learn, the realization that we get, the daily life that we live in accord with the Dharma. And one of the core practice is to change our character. Because by changing our character, you're changing your higher consciousness, you're purifying your higher consciousness. And therefore, we walk the Bodhi path and cultivate the right thinking and practice the right livelihood. So in so all these things, and in the Noble Eightfold Path, you got the right understanding, you got the right views, right thinking. And then you got the right mindfulness as a process when we go towards, especially so when we take on the 6 parameters in our practice. So this is how we practice this right livelihood. So we need to understand the Dharma so we can generate undertaking and have the consciousness of mindfulness in our practice. Our thoughts and action must be part of our spiritual practice, and this is applying that into our daily life. So our thoughts or action and also our speech, so that we then walk this Bodhi path with an upright mind and continue to uphold to purify with the purifying precepts to refrain us from deviating in our path. So all this Noble Eightfold Path, that is what Master is speaking about. And even though we are on the great vehicle, the small vehicle teaching is still fundamental in our practice and it's essential. So in the contemplation, on this Noble Eightfold Path, cultivate the good character, which I just mentioned. And why is that so? Because the good character is the one that seeks the right understanding. When you have the good character, you always seek the right understanding, right? Because you want to be good. So you need to have the right understanding. Then with the right understanding, you will generate the right thoughts. With the right thoughts, you'll give the right speech. And with the right speech, you produce the right action. You see, very often action, not just coming up from thoughts, it's from a speech, and especially in the heat of a debate or an argument, the speech will automatically lead to a unwholesome action. So then we live the right livelihood, and we contribute with the right effort or diligence in our practice, things with the right mindfulness, and then we meditate with the right concentration so that we can contemplate on the teachings. So with this, in a relationship, Let's look at understanding. I think understanding relationship arising from the noble eightfold path. So seek the right understanding through the heart, because it's the heart that can accommodate the vastness of the universe. So right understanding can only fill the heart when the heart is spacious, spacious enough to embrace the universe, because the truth is vast. So if we do that, then only then the heart can be moved to have an understanding relationship. All right, thank you.
Yeah, correct. Correct. So much, Brother Chin, for the marvelous sharing. Thanks so much. Okay, next, we have our brother Eddie to share a few words. Brother Eddie, are you there?